It's 6:32 p.m. Today is Tuesday, November 19th, 2019, and it's a regularly scheduled meeting of the Marquette Township Board. We are going to stand for the pledge if you'll join us.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Randy, roll call, please.
Trustee LaRue,
Here.
Trustee Wiegand,
Here.
Trustee Everson,
Here.
Trustee Marks,
Present.
Treasurer Johnson,
Here.
Clerk Rattari is here, and Supervisor Durant.
Here.
Staff present is Manager Gerard, Attorney Roger Zappa, Superintendent of Public Works John Kangas is here, and the Fire Chief Dan Shanahan.
Thank you. Any public comment? Anybody want to share anything before we get started? Okay. And no board member comment. That was easy. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. Tonight consists of approval of regular meeting minutes of November 5th, 2019, special meeting and closed session minutes of November 11th, and work session minutes of November 12th. Oh, okay, never mind. Bills payable in the amount of $182,519.64, and the 2020 bills payable approval list. Committee and other reports from the fire department, activities, October, road committee minutes of September 3rd, sheriff's department report from October. Financials tonight include a budget amendment number 2019-10, financial statement from October, and charter communications regarding subscription channels, which tonight is not just a flat increase, it's added channels. So I just need approval of the consent agenda, and then we'll do a roll call for the...
Second.
Discussion on that, it will be the budget amendment 2019-10, and authorization is requested to adjust revenues and expenditures in the fire fund. The contribution revenue increase $28,314 reflects the donation from the Ojibwe Casino for uniform updates. Ambulance fee increases of $12,000 will be offset by a decrease in the taxes of $12,000. Building and Grounds Department will require additional funding for repairs and maintenance due to the fire hall water line repair. The uniform increases as well as EMS supplies are reflected in the firefighting department. The debt service increase is for the fire hall loan principal payment.
Okay, we need a roll call for this?
Okay.
Okay.
John made the motion, and who seconded
Approved as
that?
amended.
Yeah, who seconded that?
I did.
He did, okay. So Trustee Marks,
Yes.
Trustee LaRue,
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
Trustee Everson,
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson,
Yes.
Clerk Rattari is yes, and Supervisor Durant.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. I'd like to make one move on the agenda, if we may, to move, so John doesn't have to stay here through the whole meeting. Move 9D up to 9A. Consider Public Works restructuring, just put that in front of the speed study, and then he can go home.
I move to accept the agenda as amended.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. All right. Any conflicts of interest with this agenda that anybody, I didn't think there would be any, but I thought I better ask. And although we already approved the agenda, I was going to put the noise ordinance update on there, but the legal says it wasn't ready. So just in case somebody's wondering why it wasn't on there, just wanted to let you know, because I did say we'd put it on. Okay. Staff reports. I have a few things to share with you. We did have the Michigan Township Business Association joint meeting today at lunch. That, of course, is an open meeting, but we mostly talked about the 2021 MDOT project from Commerce to Front Street, the repaving of the eastbound lane. And the Business Association kind of wanted to know how that impacts them. And we referred to the DDA work on lighting and recommendations on safe crossings and at the aesthetics of the corridor, and obviously the safety, maybe putting some kind of better and safer bike paths or walking paths or something along one or both sides of the highway. That did take up most of the conversation. I don't know, what else, guys, that we can share with the public? Dave?
Just the reference to what you're talking about there, the first meeting where that's going to be considered as part of that grant from the Michigan State Extension is December 16th at 6:30.
Yep, right here. Thank you.
So if you have any thoughts on it in the public, you need to show up and express your thoughts, because that's what they're going to be doing, is gathering some input before they go back and make their recommendations.
So the idea is trying to figure out how to make the corridor look better, make it more workable. They're gonna be doing, MDOT's doing the repaving. What we're trying to do is piggyback on that, use our grant abilities and capabilities and what's available, whether we need to do some kind of a millage, maybe through the DDA or something, to make some of these enhancements happen. We've just talked strongly at the DDA level about the importance of lighting, especially right in the middle, right where the restaurants and hotels are. People are crossing there all the time. So yeah, come out and give us your thoughts, everybody and anybody, on how you think that should look. So that's one thing. I don't need to do that. And you bought it, you want to, well, that's more for the board. You bought a printer today for a steel that the board can use back here. So if at some point we're having a meeting and you hear the printer go off, in case there's something we all need to have access to, we thought that would be a good idea. I think that's all I had. Anything else? Yes, sir. My light was on and I didn't see it.
How are we going to advertise that? Is there any kind of advertising to the public or the business that we have that?
Well, we've been putting the census information on the back of the utility bills. We could maybe,
I mean, a meeting for the business thing. That
yeah, I
talks
was gonna
about
say, maybe we could split that and put
Okay.
that on top. That's kind of a Randy staff
Yep.
question.
We are dealing with that. The task force is advertising as well. You know, we established a task force to deal with the SBEI grant process. And they are putting together a flyer that's going to be sent out from Michigan State. We've had Mining Journal articles, we've had TV6, we've had Facebook, we've got it up on our website. There's been a lot of publication about it. And this is really a planning grant, is what it is, you know, to assist with where we want to go. And as Supervisor Durant noted, the DDA has been talking about this now for almost 3 years, about how do we find a way to improve the aesthetics and the walkability and access generally within the corridor through this area between Commerce and the east boundary with the city. Talked about safe crossing of some manner. We've accomplished that on the west end with the tunnel. We're trying to figure a way to do that on the east side with the housing and entertainment district that we have with the hotels and the restaurants, to give an opportunity for people to safely get across the street and be visible. And that's a very difficult thing to do, by the way the corridor developed and then how it widened with MDOT's expansion of the corridor to its current configuration from the former 2-lane. So that creates some significant challenges.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody wants to add? Okay. Fire department, you're up, chief.
Oh, good evening. You do have all of our reports in front of you. If there's any questions, please feel free to ask, but I'll just give you a few highlights. And this month, for training, we did do vehicle extrication which is one of our better, more fun, if you will, extrications. That's why you might see some of the cars parked out back. A big thank you to Marquette Detailing for supplying us those cars every year. And we are in the process of now removing them from behind the fire hall. Couple calls of interest, which are pretty much in the report, though we did have a mutual aid structure fire with Sands Township. We briefly did discuss the wilderness rescue at Dead River Falls again that we had last month. Big thank you to Dan Weingartner from MDOT for publishing the MDOT roundabout, how to drive in those. We have had a few minor PIs, I guess. One was a little bit more than a minor accident, but no, we appreciate him trying to inform the public on how to drive in the roundabouts. October was Fire Prevention Month, so needless to say, very busy month. We met with over 200 students, teachers, and parents, and we also participated in a couple displays on two Saturdays, Marquette City and another business. Firefighter Amanda Arbelius has started EMT school. Good for her. She will be quite busy for the next 7 to 8 months. She just started 2 weeks ago. We did have 5 false alarms last month. 4 of them were the same business, so I'm anticipating a second reading, hoping for a second approval on the second reading for the new ordinance. The new helmets have been distributed. Very much, I should say, liked by everybody. Just a lot lighter. They fit better on your head. Just thank you for that. The boots, we're still a work in progress. Should be next week. We should have them completely ordered. And we are in the process of writing for a micro AFG grant for hose and appliances. We have quite a bit of hose that's from the early 80s and starting to fail at a pretty good rate. And just an example, a 50-foot roll of LDH 5-inch hose is up to $800 a roll. So we are in the process of writing for a micro grant, AFG grant for that.
How many rolls do you need, Dan? How many do you have on hand?
On a truck, we'll have 1,000 feet of 5-inch hose. So what does that come out to, roughly over $10 a foot? So it's quite expensive, and our hose, unfortunately, last year was probably we had a higher fail rate than we should have. But the hose is very old, and it's just starting to fail now. But I mean, we're in good shape. But something we're looking ahead for, so we thought, what do we need next? But we're writing a grant for it, or in the process of writing a grant, a micro grant. Does anybody have any questions on anything?
Anything for the
No.
chief?
Okay.
Thank you,
Yep.
appreciate it.
Thanks, Chief.
Ooh, Public Works, do you have anything to give us an update on, John? Nothing?
Not that beyond what's on the agenda.
Okay, that's fine. Just wanted to give you the opportunity. Assessing, I did put an email. I asked the assessor to give me an update on kind of what was going on. So I did just throw it in your mailboxes tonight, in case you saw it. She had 5 points on here. Basically, that they're up to date on filing reports, the county equalization, they're getting the taxes ready. Isn't that great? They got updates on mailing addresses, delinquencies. The state requires a 29 assessment roll to be audited, so they're doing that. Nothing more on Lost Creek for right now. Get an opinion of value. And the state offers a free AMAR presentation to assessors all over the UP on how to pass your AMAR test, basically. And the assessor volunteered the community room for them to do the training. It's free. So she's got about, I think she said 30 assessors signed up for the class already. And we don't have to pay for it, they don't have to pay for it, and there's about 50 total that they were hoping for, but That's next Friday, I believe, actually, or this Friday coming up. So, technical stuff going on in her department. I think the attorney's up next. Yep, Roger, have you got anything to share?
Well, it's been a pretty busy month again. Probably the most time-consuming matter was the Fox Subaru special use permit, and which I'm happy to report we've got at least some interim resolution to. And we've had some ongoing discussions among the attorneys and the court on the litigation involving the special use permit for a short-term rental unit. I just got today a proposal from the attorney for the property owner who's making a suggestion to the attorney for the neighbor for potential resolution of at least a portion of that. Remains to be seen where that's going to go. We dealt with an interesting street abandonment issue that started in 1977 and had another leg of it in 1987, and since then, not much. We've had a number of questions that I've addressed concerning the interviewing and selection of a successor manager. And we've had a land division issue that I've been dealing with the zoning administrator on, and some other peripheral issues that are more in the zoning department really than a land division issue. And that's the bulk of at least what comes to mind in the last month since I've given the last report.
Pretty good. Any questions for the attorney? Thank you. County report is pretty short too. Our two representatives came and spent an hour with us. It's funny when we invite people in, they're more interested in what's going on with us than they are of sharing what's going on with them. Doesn't matter who it is. But the hangar expansion is going on, and the landing strip is going on. They had a long landing strip, they cut it back to try to save money, and now they're talking about increasing it again. And they're working on the automated parking system. It's failing once in a while, so sometimes you don't have to pay, sometimes you're locked in. They're dealing with that. They also talked about the satellite launching it was supposed to have been October that we would be notified, or they would be notified. Now it's back to like January, February. So at least they haven't decided yet whether to use the base. And that was really about it. Remember anything else, Randy?
Well, we talked about the new facility for the rescue vehicle, and some of the sheriff's rescue equipment out near the old airport, the Nagani site. The hangar expansion is because Envoy, which is the Delta Connect airline, is going to be bringing a little larger aircraft in, so they needed to expand the maintenance facility. That's creating the expansion of the hangar. I guess we're one of 5, I think it is, sites that are being evaluated for that missile test location. Some a little further west along the shoreline, and some over near the Alpena area. The problem with those is they're a little closer proximity to the Canadian border than we are. We've got about 60 miles there, a little shorter over that way, Thunder Bay region. So that's what they're waiting to hear on. It's been backed up, as Supervisor Rand mentioned, until probably January. Now that's an estimate on their part. The governor's vetoes have hit the county pretty hard, to the tune of about $800,000 in terms of their revenue stream. The sheriff's budget is in jeopardy. It's about $120,000 short for what they need to match with the sheriff's department. Several other operations are in jeopardy, and they have been communicating with their legislators in Lansing about getting back to discussion on the budget, as opposed to living with the massive vetoes that have been passed. So beyond that, I think that was pretty much it. They I asked them about the Escanaba case before the tax tribunal, and they said it's going to be they're not looking for anything till after the first of the year, which is not a big surprise. So we're still living with the issue 7 years downstream.
Trickle down. Okay, so that was about it from the county. Community linkage. Anybody have anything to share they're hearing from the public? Good, bad, or otherwise? Maybe that's good.
Contrary to some of the things we're hearing and seeing in the media, the folks I've talked to said they really like the roundabouts. It's made their life a lot easier, easier to travel. Our roundabouts are no different than the 9 that are in the city of Marquette or the 2 that are in Ishpeming. Slow down. Get off your phone. Pay attention to what you're doing and stay in your lane. Not hard. Every one of the accidents that the chief had mentioned were driver error. Nothing to do with the well, except one. One was medical. But the others were all driver error. Too fast, distracted, changing lanes. It's all driver related. So, simple answer is slow down, stay in your lane, pay attention. Not a problem.
Okay. Committee updates. I am going to be sending out, before Dave talks, Andrea and I are working on our committees. We'll have something in your next packet for the volunteers, who's expiring, who isn't. So if you hear any of your neighbors and friends who want to get involved, I think we're going to have some openings. So I'll bring that back next time. Dave, what have you got?
Just a couple of quick things. We just finished the rec committee meeting tonight. That'll be at the next board meeting. Planning Commission from the November 13th meeting. Roger mentioned the Fox Subaru site review, and that amended site plan that was submitted by Fox Subaru for that meeting, which included the access driveway onto Northwoods Road, was approved with some conditions. The conditions were mainly dealt with the access driveway, and they were that the access driveway could not be used until the dealership is open for business, and that signage or other methods be installed at the rear access driveway to prevent commercial use, and that the buffer yard and access driveway need to be completed prior to July 1st of 2020. The marijuana zoning text amendment, we finished reviewing the definitions portion of that and moved it into to be included into the text amendment. So we're just moving on with the next step of that is going to be, where do you want it? What zoning area districts do you want it in? So that'll be coming up next. The rec plan, the draft recreation plan, was approved so that we don't lose our draft our recreation plan that was currently standing was due to expire at the end of this year, and we approved the draft recreation plan so that we have something there in case something comes up. Without it, you can't apply for anything. And then the road committee, most of what we discussed at the road committee meeting was the data loss that we suffered on the Roads Off program, which has something to do with the download that they did, the state does into the Roads Off program, and it's all kind of complicated, but we lost all of our road data. So Ryan has been working hard to restore it, and he got it restored, and we reviewed it this morning. So this afternoon we went out and did a tour of the roads that were recommended for maintenance for 2020, and hopefully, I'm not sure what the process is going to be from there to get an RFP out, but we'll get the RFP back to the board so we can get it out for this year yet. And other than that, that's about it.
So we need to give Ryan an attaboy for...
Yeah, Ryan needs an attaboy. He had to re-enter all of that information. Since we started the project in 2015, he had to re-enter all the repairs and improvements that have been made since then. He got it in.
And I believe the RFP process, UPEA typically handled that.
Yeah, he's be dealing with you on and Jason on that. I'm not sure what goes on with that, but however long it takes him.
How did it turn out? How did the Roads Off report turn out?
After we got all done tweaking it and making sure we had the right roads, and we had to go through and redo all the roads because when you upload it again, you get all the roads in the township, not just the ones that were for the road rehab program. So we had to go back and redo all that. But we went out and did the road inspections after everything was redone, and pays us right on the money. What RoadSoft is recommending is exactly what's out there. So mostly this year, or for 2020, is crack seal. There's a couple areas that, and a couple 8x8 patches that are for infrared repair, like they did on Brookton Road. And that's about it. Everything else is in pretty good shape.
So it works.
Yep, it works.
Good. Nice
That's-
job.
I was watching, T. You guys didn't even push them. Oh, I don't know who's first now. Go ahead, Ernie.
Dave, do we have that backed up now?
Yes, we do. The problem was if you just leave it on at RoadSoft, when the state does their mainframe download, it changes it all back to the way it was. But we have a separate backup now, so when they do that, we can upload it and be back to where we were.
Okay.
I understand on Forestville, which is a real problem, that they were, the last report we had was the road commission was waiting until after the repair to 41 and the roundabouts with the idea that that would be the appropriate time to come back and do what's needed at Forestville. Is that still the issue?
They have made some temporary patches on Forestville, and they've done some fill. I mean, it's totally inadequate for what's needed there. But typical county, they're very poor in their communication as to what they're actually doing. The last thing we heard was that the money they got on the grant was for engineering work, and I haven't heard anything on when they actually plan on doing the repairs.
It's, for the township as a whole, it's a very serious intersection. And we've had a couple accidents, but somebody's gonna get T-barred there eventually.
And the engineering study that they got the grant funds for was to redesign that intersection. That's why we held off doing any work on it. But I haven't seen a redesign or what they come up with yet, so I have no idea what they're doing. They don't share that stuff.
I think we need to stay on that because it's not something that we can ignore till after a serious accident. And I thank you. I thank the road commission for staying on it as long as they have.
Commission or committee? Committee? Well, don't imagine they'll do anything now. With it getting colder, it'll have to be spring anyway.
Well, the blacktop plant's closed now, so.
Okay. So the events side of it from committees, we can talk about that with the, or do you want to now?
Sure, we can do it now.
Go ahead.
Do it, Peter, you want me
Sure.
to? Okay, the Community Events Committee has been busy. Basically, we have two events that are going to happening. One this week, Thursday, and we're trying something new. This is going to be at the mall. We're calling it Music in the Mall, and basically what we've done is we've established 3 different musical groups that are going to be in the mall Thursday evening, starting at 5 o'clock, between 5 and 8 o'clock. So you can kind of walk through the mall. There'll be one at the entrance, there'll be one about halfway, and there'll be one at the far end where Penny's used to be, actually where Jandron's Fine Jewelry used to be. Different types of music, with some vendors that'll be there as well. The idea is to continue what the city of Marquette started with Music on Third, a couple of times a year. We're going to do this every third Thursday now through the winter, to try and build up basically an event to draw people into the mall and into the township. So that's going to be starting Thursday, this coming Thursday, or a day after tomorrow, from 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock in the Westwood Mall. And we do have flyers, basically. They're going to be having Gilbert's and the Happy Hoppers are donating ice cream, so there's going to be some free ice cream there. There'll be several wintertime vendors. It's kind of like kind of like a farmer's market, only the wintertime version of it is what we're trying to build there at the mall through the winter. So they've closed the farmer's market in the city. Try and move it to the township in the mall, inside the mall through the winter. So that's starting on Thursday. Then the following week, on Tuesday the 26th, is Christmas Tree, our annual Christmas event that we have at the Westwood Mall. Be starting at 6 o'clock. We'll run till about 8:30. As usual, we have the Christmas tree that's going to be put up and lit. We have Santa Claus coming. We have music, outside music, inside music as well. Again, Super One is going to be providing the food as they did last year. Hot dogs, brats, things such as that, cookies, pop, chips, in the mall, inside the mall. We're very well received last year. It's going to be happening again. So that is Tuesday, the 26th, between 6 and 8:30. This year we're doing it before Thanksgiving because Thanksgiving is so late. Give you a chance to get into the mall just before Black Friday, see what they've got, maybe pick a few things up, eat some hot dogs, have a good time. It's always a lot of fun. The weather forecast, the long-term forecast is positive. Not too far west of here, it's in the 60s are again. South Dakota and places such as that. So we're going to have some warming coming through and like forecast to not be as cold as it's been in prior years. So again, two events. First one is this Thursday, the 21st, in the Westwood Mall, 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock. Then next week, Tuesday, the 26th, between 6 and 8:30, again at the Westwood Mall, starting in the parking lot, moving into the mall with Santa Claus. Everybody invited.
And I'm thinking that the Grinch is going to be there again.
It's a possibility. The sheriff will be there just in
Did
case.
you call him? Okay,
Yep,
just want to make sure.
Sheriff will be on site to keep order,
Okay, good
shall
thing.
we say.
Can't afford to have Christmas stolen. Okay. Tonight's draft committee reports are the fire department business meeting of October 14th and the road committee minutes of November 5th. And then we're going to move Public Works restructuring discussion up. So that'll be first. John, you are at the podium.
Sure. I guess while John's heading up to the podium, I'll just give you a brief update. After your last meeting, when the board finally, actually took a position saying, yes, let's pursue a different type of an operation, following, let's see, what was that? The day after we scheduled it, and I think 2 days afterwards, we actually met with the whole staff, the whole Public Works staff, laid out the suggested reformation, basically, of Public Works and the rationale for it that the board was following. Had a pretty rousing discussion. It was interesting. The staff brought up a lot of points for consideration. There were 3 separate options that came out of that meeting that I had asked the couple of days that I was out of town. I asked John and Kirk to meet with and continue discussions with the staff to come up with a final recommended resolution, which is a little bit different than what originally was proposed, as you might expect. Once we had the discussion with staff and brought them on board and got their views in terms of staffing and what their busy times were and their not so busy times. And with that, I will kick it to John.
So following that, I would like to say that the discussions with Public Works were very productive. Our most recent meeting was as early as this morning, and the results coming out of that meeting were actually a little bit surprising to me in that they were much more supportive than I personally had expected, being fairly new to the township. So I think that's a good sign. What we did for you in the board packet was version 4 of the budgets as a result of the work session that accommodates the restructuring, which includes the addition of 1 new staff member. What those changes amount to is an increase in salary lines in the wastewater and water budgets because the fringe benefit numbers changed so little. We just put it all in the salary lines, not knowing what fringe benefits any new employees are going to need. And then the corresponding revenue goes right into the sales line for each of those budgets. So very simple revisions from what you had reviewed at the last work session.
Yeah, and where we are right now is we're evaluating, we talked, John Kirk and I talked today, and we're evaluating the proposals that came from the staff, and we're going to, for your December 3rd meeting, have a formal recommendation to you with regard to what we are recommending going forward with costs.
So that'll be on the December 3rd.
It'll be on December 3rd, which is also the public hearing night for your budget, so you'll have all of that information at the same time, prior to your decision at the following meeting on the 17th, where you would actually consider adoption of the budget.
Okay. Great. Any questions for John? Good deal.
Thank you.
We'll be anxious to see it.
Do we want a motion, though? We could.
Do you need direction on?
I don't think you need a motion at this point. We're still engaged in the discussion. I think what's going to happen now is we've gathered all the information from the staff, and the three of us are now going to sit down and evaluate that with regard to what the board's concerns were, and then we'll formulate our recommendation to you.
So the board action item that was in the package might come back to you in a couple of weeks.
Correct.
So this is more informational moving forward.
Correct.
Okay.
We had thought maybe we would be a little bit further than we are by tonight, but it didn't work out that way, and probably for the better.
And
Okay, if the delay is because you've got more options, that's.
well, and they were good options. The staff came up with three really pretty unique and pretty interesting options that we spent some time looking at. And, and any of the three conceivably could have addressed your issues with some differentiation on the coverage times and how it would have rotated. And I think the three of us are pretty much on the same page with brief discussion about where we think we're going to come down on it, and should be certainly acceptable to the staff.
Is it something we can try for like 90 days, and if it doesn't work?
Well, this would be a recommended trial for you, and they maybe do a 6-month evaluation of it, something mid-year to do an evaluation, take a look at it, see how it's working, and see if it's addressing what we wanted to address. And the two things you wanted to address was to improve the service to the residents without tremendously increasing cost, and secondly was to reduce call overtime. Call out overtime, and that's we think one of these combination of two of the options will accomplish that.
Do you see that changing the budget then? Because you put the budget numbers in there based on what the original recommendation was, right?
Correct.
And then this is something different.
Yeah, you think we're at a very familiar place. We were there with the fire department. And so we're at about the same place right now with Public Works that we were with the fire department when we were talking about expanding to do the Saturday, the weekend coverage and to cover through 8 o'clock. So we're at about the same place. It's going to be very similar. It's a relatively, I think anyway, easy for me to say not being a resident here, but in my opinion, it's an economical solution to those problems. I mean, I look at what the rate increases east and west of us are, and we're not going to be anywhere even close to that. And I think what John had pointed out last time was about a 35-cent on one of them. Like
wastewater.
What was it, $16 a year, something like that.
$16.40, I believe.
A year.
Correct.
So,
The
a
average
little more than
household.
$1 a month.
For a 4,000 a
4,000
month.
Yeah, a little more than
Customer.
$1 a month. So I think that's reasonable for what we're going to be doing. And on the other side of it, we anticipate we will have somewhere between a 8 and 10% reduction in overtime.
Okay, Ernie?
Does that mean on the board action for 9D will be put off until next meeting?
That's what I'm hearing.
It's a discussion item tonight, because as John said, it was as recent as this morning that there was additional discussion. So we want to tweak it, bring it back to you with a full-blown recommendation, which would be at your next meeting, 3rd.
Does that sound good, everybody?
Well, I'll move to return this item to the next meeting.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thanks, John. Three. Okay. Guess he doesn't want to hear the result of the speed study, or the revision. All right, then we can switch up to consider Commerce Drive speed study resolution. Or back up to it. If you remember, we had asked the road commission and the state police, because we have no control over those roads like we used to years ago, we were part of that trio, to do a speed study on Commerce. So knowing this was gonna come up, I left here this afternoon and got to 35 miles an hour before I got to Werner, and that's pretty fast. I was surprised. 35 does not sound like a big number, or 40 miles an hour, but if you're going on this kind of a road and you back the other way, 35 is just about right. So that's faster than I normally travel this road. But anyway, the recommendation tonight is to establish a 35 mile per hour speed limit on Commerce from Werner to Wright Street, if it's supported by the speed study. Randy, you were involved with this more than I, so.
I was somewhat surprised at the result when they put the tubes out. I expected the average speed to be a little higher. You've heard many, many times from the Road Commission and from MDOT, basically, that people travel at the speed at which they feel safe on the given stretch of road. We have a fairly open stretch of road here, at least we did, and traffic was moving fairly quickly, and to my eye, it looked like they were going faster than they actually were. They put the measurement tubes out, and you can see starting on page 4 of what's in your packet, 4, 5, and 6, those are the actual readings that they got from the speed tubes. And basically what it does is it comes down to an average speed of 37.8 miles per hour during that period of time, those times that they measured. So that would support either a 35 to a 40 mile an hour speed limit. And what I'm recommending to you is that you adopt the resolution to submit to the state, for the road commission to submit to the state police seeking the 25 or the 35 mile an hour speed limit. We will still go forward and put up the advisory signs that we had talked about at the fire department, near the curve, basically advisory speeds of 25 or 30 to slow traffic even more, because we've got the emergency access with the fire equipment, and then on the curve we have short sight distance. So we'll do those in conjunction with that. And that's at our call. We don't have to ask anybody to do that. We can install those ourselves.
Won't that confuse the people?
Not really, because those are the kind of dangerous stretches. When the fire department is being alerted, you've got people arriving at the fire department and equipment departing the fire department. So it's like a school zone. You really want a lower speed limit there, because you don't want people sliding through the intersection in the wintertime, trying to avoid a fire truck or whatever. Same thing on the curve. As you go with that around that radius of the curve, now you've got 2 new driveways across the street. You got, several driveways down there and a steep drop off on the other side. So, from that standpoint, I think it's reasonable on that curve radius to have a slower speed limit, simply because of that, especially in the wintertime. That's a significant drop off. If you don't travel that way very often around that curve, that's probably close to a 30-foot drop on the other side, or more, depending on where you are.
Guardrails don't always hold you in.
Say again?
Guardrails do not always hold you in.
We had an excellent example of that west of the west roundabout. That accident did not occur in the roundabout. It occurred before they got to the roundabout, but the truck that got hit actually went over the guardrail and the fire hydrant.
John, did you have your hand up?
Are you still looking for the adoption of the resolution?
Yes, it is a recommended resolution, and I am recommending that the board adopt the resolution.
Okay. So, I move to adopt the resolution authorizing the County Road Commission to conduct the speed study. Is that it?
Well, they've done that. It would be the resolution to submit the results of the speed study to the state police and seek the 35 mile an hour speed limit.
Our recommendation is to adopt that speed limit.
And did they what number do they pick? Do we say 35 and that's
It's
what they will
35 or
amend?
40, and we're going to recommend 35 as the governing unit.
Okay, and they can either accept that or change it?
Right, and that's what we've got, we do have that in the resolution. I mean, the resolution talks about the speed study, the right-of-way, and we would ask that they establish it at 35, not the 40, since it's at 37.8.
So moved.
Okay.
Support.
Any
Support.
more questions or discussion? Roll call?
Are they gonna put speed signs 35 on both ends?
And in the middle. Yeah, it would be signed. It's not signed any speed limit right now beyond Werner.
Right.
Roll call is trustee Marks.
Yes.
Secretary is yes. Trustee Wiegand.
Yes.
Trustee LaRue.
Yes.
Trustee Everson.
Yes?
Treasurer Johnson.
Yes.
Supervisor Durant.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. 9B, or C, actually, consider proposed revision of fire prevention code, second reading. So we lost our fire chief in case you had any questions, but
Yeah.
this is a second reading.
Yeah, Dan was here and had to step out, but there's no difference basically from your last meeting. We are proposing the revision of the ordinance to provide that in those instances where a business or residence, for that matter, exceeds 3 false alarms in the course of 1 year, that they would then be billed for any subsequent responses to a false alarm that would occur for the full cost. As the chief mentioned when he was here, we had a fourth with a specific entity today. So if it's passed tonight, starting tonight, if there's another, they would be billed for that response.
What I learned today, talking to him, I gave him the example that I was gonna tell the board that I already had, but to tell the public too. It's 2 o'clock in the morning and your pager goes off and you see whatever store, XYZ. So you jump out of bed, try to get your wits about you, you've gotta get all your gear, you've gotta get to the hall, and everybody, whoever can get there, gets there, and then you get called off. That's what could happen with most cases, except, he said, at night, because there's nobody there to call them off, they have to go.
Respond, yeah.
So now you're talking, I didn't realize that, you're talking 4 calls of fully completing, getting to the hall and going to that store
Yeah.
in the middle of the night.
Moving equipment.
And the problem with that is, they don't mind doing it, but it's a false alarm. And it's because this company, or some of these companies, will not fix the equipment.
Right.
That's
They've
the
failed
biggest
to
objection.
maintain or failed to repair the equipment. It's not just the inconvenience and the irresponsibility of rolling the crew, it's the risk as well. I mean, every time those pieces of equipment roll, it costs a lot of money. Wear and tear, potential accidents, any number of things occur that are unnecessary. And I guess that's the punitive part of what we're talking about. If the entities are going to ignore the orders that they're receiving to repair their systems, they should pay.
Not to
Especially
mention-
since in some cases, they're getting a real tax break.
Our friends, the tribunal. But the other part of that is too, now you've got forces committed, and what happens if something else happens?
No, you have another crew that then responds.
Well, I know, but
Yeah,
you're still, we
I
have
know,
limited
you double your
equipment.
cost.
Right, we have limited equipment, and what if whatever's there has to go somewhere else?
Right.
Did I see a hand?
Got my light on.
Oh, yours, okay. I thought I saw Dan's hand. Go ahead. Now I've got 2 up.
I move to approve the proposed revisions to Section 3 and Section 6 of the Fire Prevention Code as a second reading, that the revised code be designated as Ordinance 11-1919.
Support.
And Ernie, did you have your hand up?
The only question I have is, when does this take effect? Do we have to advertise this before it takes effect, or it goes immediately?
It becomes effective immediately upon publication. It has to be published after adoption and then will be effective immediately.
We're talking within a week.
Couple of days. Yeah.
Like I said, within a week, by the
Yep.
time you get down there and get it published. Okay.
Anything else? Is this, do we need a
Yes.
roll call? Because it's an ordinance, eh? Even though it's amendment? Okay.
Clerk Rattari is yes. Trustee Marks?
Yes.
Trustee LaRue?
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand?
Yes.
Trustee Everson?
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Durant?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Wise to kind of just draft a little letter to this one company indicating what has happened and that, and what's going to be taking place in the future?
My understanding is they have been advised.
Okay, that's fine.
I asked the same question, yeah.
That's fine.
Yep, as long
I'm
as they're
trying to be a little
notified.
polite.
Well, and
I
it's
think
happened
they were-
a
I
few,
think they were
couple other.
Politely advised, but it was, I think they were advised in no uncertain terms that they are the reason that this is being done.
Okay, consider prospective new manager's contract. Since, okay. Manager Gerard's contract expires 12/31/19. And the board has granted him an extension after he requested 6 more months. So right now, his last day would be May 31st of 19.
Correct.
In the middle of that process, or the second part of the process, is that we've advertised and solicited and taken 17 applications from various people and narrowed that down to 4. In this process, because this manager is the board's employee, we have a contract, a separate contract with the manager for his employment. Unlike an actual employee who just, I mean, this is still an at-will contract, but it's a little different for him being our employee. So I thought it prudent to at least bring the contract back to you and make sure that if we're going to offer this to someone else, that we all agree that these are the conditions that we want to put. And then it's possible they could ask for something else. There can be a negotiation that goes on. But since the contract really hasn't been revised, it's been corrected and streamlined in the last 17 years, I have to ask the question, is this what you want? Is this exactly how you want to present it? If you do, we're good. We'll be set for Friday. I made some notes on mine. Did somebody else want to hear anything, or do you care, or I have lights?
You have lights.
All right, I think you were first, Ernie.
I think overall, the agreement is not that bad. There's a few things in there that we need to address in that. On term in section 2, number C, just the dates and that have to be changed and that, a few other things like this here. I think on section 3, the salaries have to be blanked out as to what's going on at this point in time and how it's happening. On section 3A, how we're going to look at the future increases for that position. We can continue as we are now, or we're gonna go with something else. I think that's the board decision. Have to look at that. On benefits, overall, not too bad. I'm looking at paid vacation days, starting out with a smaller number and working up over a shorter period of time, bringing it up to a number and that too, so, and that. And the one thing on the section 7A, it says on the evaluation, until a new evaluation developed by MML, I don't know if that's the right way to go or not, and be approved by the Labor and Employment Council. I don't know why they have to approve what we want to do in that.
It's mainly just a legal review.
Yeah.
That's my notes. Someone else can now come up with their notes.
John, were you next, I think?
That, I'm following along on what our treasurer just talked about. It occurred to me that we need to take a long look at where we are and what we're doing, and so I have a question of our township attorney. In our quest to find a replacement for retiring township manager of the township board has reduced the field down to 4. 4 applicants will be coming up for review and discussion on Friday when we meet. It would be good to have this question answered by our attorney, I think, as we go into that meeting. If a majority of the township board in deliberations has an interest in adding a signing bonus to the manager contract offered to an applicant, is that action legal, or would it be prohibited in some way?
What would the intent of the bonus be? You have to be getting something for your money, and maybe that,
Signing.
okay. Having not anticipated the question, I don't see anything necessarily precluding that, but the precaution I would need to point out is that we can't just give out gratuities from the township. It has to be something in exchange. The signing is arguably an incentive to accept the employment, and that's similar to, in some fields, it's instead of a scheduled increase each year, a one-time pay increment will be given, even in collective bargaining situations. I'm not seeing anything that comes as a red flag just off the top of my head. There's one area I will look at tomorrow morning, and I will have an answer to that before the interviews on later this week.
Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't see anything other than the obvious things about the removing some of those dates and numbers, but I think you should move forward, just have legal review it one more time and press on. You had another question in your email about whether we should provide the list of questions to the applicants, and I'm opposed to that. We're supposed to be interviewing some people and gauging their response to our questions. They're supposed to present themselves well. They're supposed to be able to work on their feet a little bit. I think it's not just a test for yes or no answers. It's an interview, and we should be able to gauge what they're doing. So I don't think they should get them in advance.
I agree.
Okay. I wasn't about to make that decision on my own, so I told them I would ask the board tonight. Thank you for reminding me, Dave. Ernie, were you next?
I think on Friday, when we go through the 4 applicants and do our interviews and that, I think at that point in time, I don't think we'll make any type of selection until after they're gone completely. Then we can talk about what's going on. And at that point in time, either do it on Friday, or we set up a work session sometime next week or something like that to do the final review. I'm looking at the attorney, whether that would be to do, as long as it's open meeting and that, we could do something like that and then make the same suggestion as to that. And then once you get to that, then the next thing is the actual agreement, to come to a conclusion of the board as to where we want to go with the agreement. So
That's why I figured if we had to make any changes, we'd have that time. I figured a special meeting, we could set it Friday to have our actual deliberations. But is that okay with you, Roger?
Well, with the one caution that if you have a work session, you may
No, I
not
said a
make.
special meeting.
well, the treasurer mentioned a work session
Okay.
specifically.
That was the first thing that came to mind.
Okay. You can deliberate and discuss things at a work session, but you cannot make a decision, you can't make a motion to hire someone at a work session. You can have, of course, a special meeting, which would allow action of that nature.
Randy?
Yeah, every interview that I've went through, you do not give your interviewee the questions. That's what you're gauging their interview on, basically, so
Spontaneous
I would
response.
be very opposed to that.
I'm glad for that, too. Dave?
I submitted some questions to you. I just wondered if you had gotten them.
I did, and I was gonna try to incorporate them, send them to, we're running out of week. Send them to the rest of the board, see what they think. They do or don't. I mean, it doesn't preclude us from asking a question of the person that's sitting here.
Well, that was my next question.
But I
We
just
seem
wanted to
be
have-
trying to put a compilation of the 10 questions or so together so they all get asked the same questions, but there seemed to be some suggestion that you can't ask pretty much anything you want after that.
No, I'm just trying to keep it to an hour, keep it kind of structured. I figured roughly 10 minutes in the beginning, they would give us their whatever spiel and go through the questions, and then they could ask us questions. So I'm gauging, that's what I told them, maybe an hour, hour and 15 minutes. That's why I scheduled an hour in between each, just in case they run over.
Well, as long as I can ask them whatever I want outside the 10 questions, I'm happy.
Yeah,
I think
That's
more
fine.
questions will come up as we're talking.
probably, yeah. But we need to have, in fact, I was trying to kind of get it down to 6. Randy gave me some of the questions too, and it's hard. I mean, you could sit
It
there for
is.
20 minutes just with 20 different questions, but I'm open for suggestions,
Be a lot of length.
absolutely. Yes. I didn't see yours, Dan. I think Randy, yours was next.
Randy 1 versus Randy 2.
He already got his, you're next.
In response to Trustee Wiegand's question, absolutely, yes. In interview, you have a slate of standard questions that all candidates are asked. How they respond to those questions may lead you to additional questions, and that's perfectly legitimate to do that. And you don't have to ask that same question of all of the candidates. Your whole point for interviewing these candidates is so you can get a realistic assessment of how much they know about your organization, how they might fit into the organization, how their mind works, and whether or not they can communicate with you and give you a good, concise, clear answer to the question that you're asking. And you may need to come back once or twice if they don't hit the points that you're looking for to see if they even really know what it is that you're asking. So, yeah, you have that flexibility, but you have the standard set of questions that everybody gets asked, given the same opportunity to answer the questions, and you're going to have some, I would suspect, you're going to have some that will give you a very short answer, and others that will give you a very detailed answer to the same question. So for one, you may have a lot of follow-up questions. For another, you may not have any. So, but that is fair game to really get to the meat of what it is you're asking. So.
Dan, you did have your hand up.
I did. The manager just answered my question. I was wondering if we asked questions along the way, did we have to then ask them of all the candidates? And he answered no.
Dave, right? What's next? Randy? Okay.
This is a question for Roger. Now that the interviews are scheduled, the names actually are public now, correct?
When they show up for the interview, they are,
Okay.
certainly.
So when I do my agenda for that meeting, their names will be on that sheet?
Not yet.
No, well,
I would still call them candidate A, B, C, D until they're actually here for the interview.
that's the question I have.
Well, in the posting too, would just say applicants?
Until they actually, you see the whites of their eyes, so to speak, they have the option of withdrawing
Okay.
their candidacy. And I believe that the ones, at least some of the ones that you are addressing had specifically requested confidentiality while we are able to maintain that. And I had explained in my opinion that you can only honor that so far. And that is completely ended once they show up. Now, as a practical matter, most of the time, whether you divulged it on the agenda or not would not make a lot of difference because they will show up. But you can envision situations where perhaps a candidate may not wish to do that, I guess.
So I'm just looking for, so basically for my agenda for that meeting, it would be appropriate to put candidate A, B, C, and D until they actually show up.
I think all you really need to do is say you're having a meeting to interview candidates for the following position.
Yeah, but I have to have some sort of an agenda to follow.
Well, you can put the times, in my understanding, you have times, and I don't recall what those were,
Yeah.
but you can just list that we'll have interviews commencing at approximately the following times of four candidates.
Okay, that's all I need to know.
11, 1, 3, and 5.
That answers my question.
So then I would wonder if the third candidate shows up at 2:30 and we're all here, does it make a difference to anybody if we interview them? Do we have to stick to the time slots if the person themselves is ready?
You're probably gonna want some time after the interview to pull your thoughts together and to document that particular interview, so I think having a little bit of time between them is valuable for you.
You might want to change your question, too.
Yeah, well, you
That's
might
why
wanna,
I
you might wanna
figured an
stretch your
hour.
legs, you might wanna do any number of things, but I think you need to give yourself that little breather, because I tell you, doing interviews for that length of time is gonna be physically taxing.
Yeah, I can do that. I'm just wondering for the candidates' purposes, if they show up 15 minutes early,
They can wait in our office.
wait, does it matter?
Sure, they can wait in our office.
Okay.
They can go in the conference room, they can go in the community room.
Hide them in the closet.
You know, whatever, they can certainly come in, into the conference room.
Okay. Dave's light's still on.
On your question, do we have to actually put a time down when each candidate is going to be interviewed on the agenda, or can we just put the starting time and then we can take our breaks as we need them, and if they're early, so be it. It's not on the agenda, so we don't have to stick to it anyway.
Yeah.
That's my first
That's
question.
what I was
My next
wondering.
question was to the questions that I submitted to you. I would hope, my personal opinion, that is any candidate that is serious is on our website researching how we operate. And that's where some of those
Questions not necessary?
that's where some of those questions came from, is seeing how serious they are.
Okay. So, back to the contract, that's the part that we're talking about. I know it's kind of all tied in together, but did anybody else have any items circled? I did, I pretty much had the same ones that Ernie did. Do we want to, well, we don't have to discuss the makeup of it right now, but I was wondering about a probation period, if that's necessary. And I didn't know if 3/12 of the salary for severance was too high or not.
I think that's pretty standard.
I think those are the only ones besides what Ernie said. So with some of these issues, my question is, do we need to have a discussion about this? Do you want to have a work session? Or are we good with what we have? Ernie?
Want me to push the button?
It's all right. Saw your hand.
I think I was corrected and said work session. I think we have to have a special meeting.
I said work
and-
session again,
And as
sorry.
we go through and make our decision, at the same time, look at the agreement and see how we want to modify it at that point in time. So, and move in that direction. So hopefully we can do it all in one special meeting.
Setting.
That. So I think that's about the best that we can come up with. But I can't see us doing anything after Friday. We're gonna be dead.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a lot of information in front of us. We're gonna have to sit back and hopefully spend the weekend and just go back and try and relook at what's going on and what's been said and that, and try and come up with what we think is what we wanna, direction we wanna go.
And I had asked Randy about videotaping the meeting as well, so he's gonna check with John or Ryan or somebody and
John,
see if they can spend the day.
John's available, so
Yes.
he will be here
Okay.
for that.
So that way we can go back, that's a real plus, go back and look at it again, see how they answered everything. So, you have something else, Dan? Go for it.
My light on?
Yep, it is.
I agree with Ernie that I think we need to really organize ourselves and get our questions and get things in order so that when they come in, we're gonna be ready for them. So I think a work session or whatever we call it is in order.
Do you have a problem with the questions? Did you have any recommendations or ideas before I type something final and look at Dave's? And I just
Well-
want to make sure you have them in time
Mhm.
before we get too far.
You can
Okay,
even change the questions also.
so, go ahead, Pete.
I'd asked Randy a question. Is there anything in there that we should look at since you've been working on it, most of this agreement for years?
Well, the one that
How would it
you're,
affect you and what would you like to see changed?
well, I think it was a very workable contract. I mean, it was the evolution of 17 years, you know. and
Right.
The last one was reviewed 2 years ago. This one you're looking at was reviewed 2 years ago and made some changes. The reason it's worded the way it is in some of those areas with benefits and things such as that is to keep it consistent with the rest of the staff, so you don't have jumbled up benefit packages to have to manage. Tied mainly to the professional administrative staff. I would suggest that, you know, for the interview process, and when you basically get down to your selected questions, that you have specific individual members ask specific questions, so you can keep that rhythm going and that smoothness going, and, you know, and be well prepared, as trustee said. You only got 2 days. So it's coming. I'll put together I've got a form that just dawned on me. I've got a form that I use that basically is a 5-point scale in terms of how somebody answers a question, whether they hit all of the elements you're looking for or not, that I could provide for you to take a look at to see if you want to use that. It's a handy tool that, you know, as you're going through the questions, you know, obviously if you're only asking one of the 10 questions, you're listening to the other 9, so you can do an evaluation, you know, and shift. But it's kind of on a 5-point scale, it gives you some flexibility in terms of whether they really missed totally the whole concept you were looking for, they nailed it, or somewhere in between. And gives you a chance then to, at the end of the interview process, to take those 4 candidates and see how you evaluated them in their actual performance.
So maybe it'd be easier to incorporate that in with the questions, so you've got it all on one sheet.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll get that from you tomorrow. Okay, John?
I think what Manager Gerard just said is absolutely the way that when one person is interviewing the candidate, you can come up with that. I think though, with the board listening to the answers given, we're going to need a little time to have a consensus of how the board felt about the answers. So we need a little time to talk to each other and have the benefit of how each of us felt about the answers that were given. I don't know how we do that exactly, but I think that a little time of discussion for consensus would be good.
After the candidate's finished, you mean? Right
When-
in the
when
same
the-
sitting?
Yes, when we ask a question of somebody who is an applicant, and they give us an answer, I don't think that the board as a whole is gonna work in lockstep. I think we're gonna have different opinions from our experience in fields that we've been at, and we're all gonna have possibly different ratings of that answer. I'd like to have the benefit of the consensus of the board as we move along. And if there's room to do that, I think it would be worthwhile.
But
We've
while
had-
the
we-
candidate's here, you're saying?
Pardon?
You mean while the candidate's
Oh.
here?
No, when the candidate is all done and out the door,
But the same day?
but the same day, I think we should have a little period of time to find out how 7 members of this board felt about the answer to this question, that question, and the next one. Because we've all brought something to the table from where we've been. And I think that we've benefited from some input from various board members, and we should take advantage of that. If the consensus is that nobody had any alarm bells go on, then that's one thing. But I think we need to go through the session of that. That's one way to thoroughly give everybody on this 7-member board a chance to say what they think about the answer to that question. If we don't have anything to say, that's one thing. But we've had experiences where we've benefited from a board member that made us all think twice. Thank you.
Dan, I think you're next.
Well, we're gonna have an hour in between each, or roughly an hour in between each candidate, so that'd be a great time to sit down. But I'd like to see if we have 10 questions and we decide who is asking what question per candidate, I would like to see at least each board member have a list of the questions with the candidate's name on it, the question written down, and an area to write your narratives down as you're going down, so.
Yeah, I sent that to you.
I'm sorry?
I sent that to you.
And I think that's important to write that all down, and then, like John was saying, after we're done, we can go through and discuss answers.
I'll just incorporate his little number matrix into that form and resubmit it. And if you guys each want to pick a question, that's fine, too. I mean, maybe we get 7 questions. Would that be easier? We don't have to have 10.
I don't know why you can't give the applicant the questions.
No.
No.
Ahead of
We have
time?
consensus not to
No,
do that.
when they sit down.
You want to know how they react on their feet.
Yeah. Pete, or Randy, you had your light on.
Oh, I thought I turned it off, sorry.
Are you good then, or?
Too many clicks.
Okay. Ernie?
I think what John's bringing up is something to consider. But once an applicant is done, we have an hour before the next one. We start in discussing. There isn't gonna be, I'll tell you right now, there's not gonna be enough time in that hour to go able to go through everything and that, because you're gonna get into some detail stuff. And all of a sudden, the time's just gonna fly in that. Your best bet, from my experience, is to write down what's going on as a time with the applicant. So that when you have time in the future, when you sit down and go through everything, you're not under a time restraint. Because you're on an hour time restraint. And if you don't get through it, then what? Now you got another one coming in, and you're going that way. I would prefer a special meeting a following week or that, where we actually sit down in a couple hours, go through everything one by one. And you'll be surprised at how fast some of it will go. Some of it will be lots of discussion and maybe come up to nothing, to who knows.
Well, we better agree on is your light on now? No?
No, just shut it.
Okay, then this, Randy, we better agree on this before we start.
I agree with Treasurer Johnson, and we will have the taped video of the candidates, and it might give you the weekend to review that, see how they do on some of those questions, and you might change your mind over that time. So it gives you some time to think of it, over that time, over the weekend or before that next meeting.
Randy was first.
You were first again?
Me?
Yeah.
The more time that goes by following your interview, the more confused answers become in terms of allocating answers to actual candidates. It's pretty critical that as soon after the interview as possible, you you organize your thoughts about that candidate, and then you can go back and look at the video, but you'll start formulating, and it happens very easily, you'll start formulating and remembering answers that candidate 1 gave when you're thinking about candidate 3, unless you've really sat down and immediately following the interview, put your feelings down in terms of how you rate that candidate, because you don't want to get on that horns and halo type of a philosophy where this answer sounded better than that answer, but I think it was candidate 3 that said it, and it was really candidate 1, and it gets real confusing real fast. So I think that's a great idea, to have a follow-up meeting, maybe where as a group you sit down and you watch the interview and evaluate your feelings on those candidates. And when you get down to your top 2 candidates, as such, I mean, numerically you're going to get there. It's going to be probably a fine line between your top 2 candidates. Is my light still on?
Yep.
Okay. Dave, you should put new lights on here. Red light and a green light.
Here.
Go
I just
for it.
wanted to say I'm sorry.
No, it's helping me keep it straight. It's actually pretty good. They're kind of noisy. I don't know how that feedback's going to come in with the microphone, but. All right, so answer this. You want to each pick your own question out of what I can send you something tonight. You want to each pick a question, put your name on it. I just figured I'd read all of them, but if you guys want to.
Just assign us, it doesn't really matter.
Okay, that's fine.
They just-
You want to try to get it to 7 questions?
Otherwise,
each
we're
have
gonna be
one?
going back and forth. I want this one, somebody
Yeah.
else, you just assign them.
Okay,
Just assign 7 to us, and then you take the other 2.
Yeah.
oh,
That's fine.
you want 9?
We don't care.
6?
We don't care.
7, 8?
Should have 10, keep it even.
Do 10, we'll do 7 of the,
If his matrix is 5, then maybe 10 should be.
no,
should be 10.
5 point.
We don't care.
Well, enough questions, if you're allotting X amount of time,
Have it.
you're gonna want to give the candidates enough time to thoroughly answer the question. So however, whether you want to assign 8 minutes, 10 minutes, 6 minutes, whatever to a question, and that'll determine how many questions you have. Each of you should have 1 question, and then maybe have the supervisor finish with a follow-up, with a final question, and then let them ask you questions.
That's fine.
Sometimes when
Maybe
you
have
find
8
out,
questions.
sometimes when you find out that when you ask them a question, if you cut them out too short, you learn more by them talking than you do in listening to them than you do if you're talking and they're listening to you.
Remember, this is the position that is going to be doing your bidding in other places, so you want the answers, you want the person to be able to concisely frame what the issue is and answer the question without rambling on, because you lose your audience after about 3 minutes. So, they need to be able to focus their attention, focus their answer, to answer your question fully but succinctly, not spend a lot of time. You don't want
You're trying to be politically
I'm trying to be nice. You don't want someone standing up at the podium rambling, trying to answer your question because they don't understand what you asked, or they can't formulate an answer in such a way. I mean, you've all been frustrated by that.
We all know who you mean.
You've all been frustrated by that. And this is gonna be the person really that's gonna be dealing with outside entities, with governmental entities, with state entities, with everything else. So you want someone who's got their act enough together to be able to understand what you're asking quickly without, voraciously writing down every word you ask. Gather what your question is, what you're trying to get at, and answer it completely but briefly, to give you an overview of it. Now I'm rambling, but
So
in any event.
I was kind of hoping we'd have like 10 minutes for them to tell us whatever they want to tell us about themselves.
Who they are.
Roughly 5 minutes a question. I was going to ask Randy if he could time it. He's pretty good at that. But I don't want to have you not participate and feel overwhelmed with the timing thing. So we've got roughly 75 minutes is what I was kind of
Yeah,
thinking.
it's 5 to 6 minutes. That's a long time. They
Yeah,
should be
it
able to
is.
answer
I
the
mean,
question
even
in
talking
5 to
3
6
minutes
minutes
at the
fully.
podium is really enough,
Right. Yeah, if you're giving them 5 minutes to answer your questions, that's sufficient. They should be able to do that.
Yeah.
That's 50 minutes, and
Kind of my
then
thought.
Well, if you're standing, if your manager is making public comment before a government agency, they're gonna have 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever, to be able to address their point and get it across enough for the legislator or whoever it is they're talking to process it.
I would suggest too that you, when you do start the thing, that on the follow-up questions, try to keep your answers to 5 minutes.
My answers?
No, the candidates'
Yeah,
answers.
that's what I said, roughly 5 minutes.
I don't want to cut anyone off.
Yeah.
Well, if you're gonna be recording this, have whoever's recording it be the timekeeper.
And John can just go.
Yeah.
Because we were thinking of putting the candidate over here, right? That's the best way for you to film,
To
is if
see
they're
the
on this
person on the
side.
camera, the face, because
Yeah.
otherwise you
So
don't
we
see
can
the
put
back
a
of their head
table
That's fine.
over
or
there.
move the podium over, either one, so we can all see them. Rather than having it here, originally, we were kind of thinking put the table and chair, like the Public Works guys, but then the operator's only going to see their back, so that really didn't make sense.
If we put the
That's
table over there, facing this way, at least you can see their face
Yeah.
and their expressions, so. That's what we plan on doing, and, yeah, I can keep the time, it's not a big deal, and I can just,
Just so we kind of have a rough idea.
yeah,
We're all going to be listening, but I don't want you to get lost either.
I won't.
Okay, that's good. I have good direction. Anything else? All right, so special meeting as a wrap-up to have the discussion and look at the contract at the same time, when we finally get together and actually deliberate about the candidates. Okay, so we can schedule that Friday if we want, for the next week or whatever. And we're getting into Thanksgiving, so it's probably gonna be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, if you want to. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Okay, are we good on that? Down to public comment? Yes, we have no public. Any announcements to share? Yes, sir, Randy?
Today I chatted with the county clerk, looks like February 6th, which is a Thursday. We are going to be hosting an election inspector training session here at the hall. And we'll have some people from, because I need some of my folks to get trained, because their certification's expiring. And anyone that wants to be an election inspector, those training sessions are available to the public. So right now it's tentatively February 6th, Thursday. We're gonna have 2 sessions here, 10 to 12 and 1 to 3. And I'll keep you updated on that. And I did send out to the board, anyone that would like, because we're almost at 2020, anyone that would like to run for the board next year, you have to early April to make those determinations and file your paperwork with the county clerk.
Is that if you're running on a partisan ballot or if you're running independent, it's later, right?
Partisan ballot is early April, nonpartisan, I believe, is in July. Because you don't have the primary to deal with if you're nonpartisan, so. But at the same token, remember, there's different petition requirements for partisan versus nonpartisan, and that's spelled out in the, I believe, the petitions when, I don't know if we have them quite yet, but we will soon.
Anything else? Any other announcements? Managers report.
You do have a printed report in your packet for the edification of the public. As you will recall and as you know, you achieved a consensus budget, 2020 budget at your last budget work session, which was held on the 12th, November 12th. The public hearing will be advertised in the Mining Journal on Saturday, the 23rd, which is well outside the 7-day notice requirement prior to the public hearing being held on December 3rd at your next board meeting. At that time, you'll be taking public comment on the 2020 budget. You'll also be taking formal action to establish the taxation. You'll have the truth and taxation hearing that will establish the taxes to be levied in December for collection early in 2020. You will then, at your December 17th meeting, if you follow on schedule, at your December 17th meeting, you will actually adopt the final budget. That has to be done by December 31st. We've got it scheduled for your December 17th meeting. Catch the Christmas Vision has already been spoken of, but that'll be on Tuesday, the 26th of November, between 6 and 8:30 at the Westwood Mall parking lot, followed by Santa Claus and refreshments inside the Westwood Mall till about 8 o'clock. Our holiday hours coming up for residents for Thanksgiving holiday, we will be closed. The offices will be closed on Thursday, November 28th and Friday, November 29th. For Christmas, we'll be closed Tuesday, the 24th and Wednesday, the 25th of December. And then New Year's Day, Wednesday, January 1st, we will not be in the office. During any of those times, however, we have 24-hour service call available if there's an emergency need for water sewer. 228-6220, our general number. Follow the prompts for the call out for the staffs that are scheduled. Remember, deer season, rifle deer season is currently active, followed by muzzle loading deer season. So if you're going to be out and in the forests in the township, make sure that you're visible, make sure that you're making yourself known to be there. If you have pets with you, make sure the pets are on a leash. Coyotes and wolves look an awful lot like dogs, and they may be targeted. So just be cautious with that. The next corridor committee meeting is going to be here. Let me take that back. No, November 12th was here. The next one has not been scheduled as yet. So go from there. And that's all that I had.
Any questions for the manager?
Oh, popcorn as well on the Christmas?
Did that today.
Oh, okay. So there'll be a number of different types of refreshments on at the Christmas tree lighting.
Anything else for the manager? No? Okay, any board member comment? Anybody else want to
Oh, I
share?
gotta
anything?
review the motions first.
One
Oh, yeah.
correction on your
Was
US
right over-
41, Lynn.
Pardon me?
There's one correction on the US Recorder Advisory Group. Bill
Oh, yeah.
DeGroot was named manager, not supervisor.
Oh, and those, yes.
Yeah, in the minutes. Those are not our minutes. Those are the
Right.
corridor committee meeting minutes. Yeah, and they've been noticed of that.
I called it today.
Really
Yeah,
been.
sorry, Randy, I jumped the gun.
Okay, so reviewing the motions of the meeting, the first motion was to approve the consent agenda as presented. That was approved. The second motion was to approve the agenda as amended, where we moved the 9D up to 9A and then renumbered the rest of the agenda, and that was approved. Third motion was to bring back to the next meeting the Public Works restructuring agenda item. That was approved. Fourth motion was to approve the speed study resolution. That was approved. Fifth motion was to approve the second reading of the fire prevention code, and that was approved. And that is it.
Okay. So right now, all I have for the future agenda is the recommendation coming across from the Public Works restructuring.
That's all I have for the next meeting, yeah.
And you already said no board member comment, I believe, so we just need a final motion.
Move to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 8:06, thank you.